These news are. I'm Solomon Danye. Thanks for joining me. A report by Reuters claiming that the state of emergency proclamation compels citizens to hold ID cards which shows their ethnicity is misleading and misrepresents the requirements of the proclamation, according to Ethiopia Current Issues Fact Check. The state of emergency allows citizens to make use of various alternative identity documents, including driver's license, employment ID card and national passport. None of these documents include the ethnicity of their bearer, Ethiopia Current Issues Fact Check noted. Some Western countries are violating sovereignty of other countries in a bid to secure their national interest through humanitarian activities, military operations, as well as in a political conspiracy. Talking to TV English, Tesfaye Boyosa, a researcher at the Ethiopian Institute of Strategic Affairs, said Ethiopia's recent position is not beyond the hard fact that some countries are facing now.
Some Western countries are working to cement their interests by twisting arms and flaming the domestic affairs of Ethiopia. Talking to TV, Tesfaye Boyosa, a researcher at Ethiopian Institute of Strategic Affairs, said some Western countries are standing together to help destabilization steps of enemies who waged war against Ethiopia. So far, visa restrictions and arms embargo have been imposed to Ethiopia's senior government officials, as well as economic sanctions.
Especially after 1945, when the United States came to lead the world, or this Western world, they developed different mechanisms to intervene in the affair of another country. Ethiopian case is not special. This is not unique actually, because there were many interventions, both military and non-military. For instance, we can say, we can mention some country which faced military intervention, for like recently, 10 years ago, the case of Syria, Libya, and some other Middle East country.
According to Tesfaye, the U.S. government has imposed economic sanctions in various countries to capitalize its interest against sovereign nations. The U.S. trial to delist Ethiopia from AGOA eligibility is a symptom how they are calculating to go far against the will of Ethiopians, the researcher remarked.
Economic sanction is also another intervention. For instance, today United States sanctioned Iran, North Korea, Eritrea, and the other. This is also sanctioned. So United States also sanctioned Ethiopia. This sanction is authorized by United States State Department and Treasury Department. State Department focused on military. Treasury Department is focusing on Ethiopian economy, especially AGOA. That's what we have seen last time when the president was just cancelled Ethiopia from member of AGOA. So this is an economic sanction, and this is some type of intervention that Westerns are doing. And the Ethiopian case is not exceptional. There are many cases that we so far observed in Africa and Asia and many countries.
Tesfaye stated the U.S. administration needs to ensuring geopolitical interests by avoiding moves against the will of the people and disturbing the nation.
United States is it's obviously imperialist. Imperialist country means a country which wanted to govern another country, so which wanted to control, govern another. So United States is an imperialist and wanted to control many countries in the world. Actually, this is obvious. So they need Ethiopia. They need this East Africa geopolitical. They have some geopolitical interest. They have so to achieve this geopolitical interest, they need the Ethiopian government. The prime minister must work with them. Otherwise, they may just try to disturb the country. The intervention of the United States is not to support some group in Ethiopia, or this is not their big agenda.
Some Western countries are capitalizing the internal political instability as a means to bring regime change in Ethiopia due to unfavorable conditions to secure their national interest.
They now capitalize on Ethiopian internal politics. They are now using that as a means to bring Ethiopia to chaos and bring some regime change. Because they are now thinking that Prime Minister Abiy is not working according to their interest. So they need what? They need some regime change of government. Then they shifted from from that to Ethiopian internal politics. Now they are using Tigrayan case as a means to destroy, the country. Today's foreign intervention is not to support some group in Ethiopia, but it is an agenda of the United States to support itself. It's an agenda to dismantle this country.
According to Tesfaye, national dialogue may be one solution to halt the recent political turmoil in Ethiopia.
A senior member of the Prosperity Party, Nabiyu Suhul Mikhail, has expressed his disappointment over the international community and some Western nations for not condemning TPLF's attacks on civilians. He underscored that no negotiation would be held with a terrorist group, adding the international community should therefore understand the reality in Ethiopia and avoid meddling in the internal affairs of the country. Kazan Jani reports.
In an exclusive interview with TV English, Nabiyu Suhul Mikhail, one of the senior members of the Prosperity Party, said to put pressure on the new government of Ethiopia is violating its sovereignty and international law, adding that the Ethiopian people will never negotiate the sovereignty and dignity of the nation.
Well, Ethiopia is a sovereign nation. So what the proper machinery of the state decides will be an official decision. So other nations must respect this decision. If they cannot respect this decision, then they are also questioning the sovereignty of the nation. If they have an idea, they can contribute. But this is an internal affair, and there are multiple reasons to designate these groups as terrorist groups. Maybe the name will not be much. In fact, it will be less, because what they have been doing is more than even being a terrorist. So therefore, the Ethiopian sovereignty must be respected, and the Ethiopian government designated these groups as terrorist groups, and they are. And the people of Ethiopia is accepting this. Of course, it was a demand of the people as well. When we come into the issue of negotiation, well, the decision will be the decision of the Ethiopian people and the government of Ethiopia. Any forcible kind of intervention to bring these two unmatchable groups is not acceptable.
Noting the very evil nature of the TPLF, he expressed his disappointment over the failure of the international community to condemn the terrorist group despite its brutalities and invasion of some parts of neighboring region states to cause human and material loss.
So from the start, propaganda was its main machinery, and because the conflict started suddenly and the world was occupied with some other issues like the pandemic, the coronavirus pandemic, and other related issues, it was a better situation for the TPLF to mislead, first of all, its forces, and then the people of Tigray, and then the people of Ethiopia, and also the international community. A means launched by the TPLF. And even when the war advances and expands into the other regions like Amhara and Afar, he was implementing the same.
According to him, the TPLF terrorist group has been disseminating false information about the new government of Ethiopia to mislead the international community.
Well, if the TPLF has a power, then its power is propaganda. And the propaganda is very much far-fetched, and misleading, and it is misleading to the extent that it also misleads the international community. And when we see how this conflict was brewing is based on false narratives of both the conflict and also of the pre-conflict situation. And TPLF's main weapon is this negative propaganda. And when they attack the Northern Command, it was so sudden, and that gives a chance for the TPLF to also bring a wrong narration about the conflict and how it all began.
It was noted that the terrorist group has been committing evil acts, including raping, killing, destroying infrastructures and looting properties of residents in areas it invaded.
Fossil of our human ancestor, one of the old. Hiking in the Simien Mountains is a highlight of traveling in Ethiopia.
Kingdoms and empires.
The Grand Renaissance Dam, which is built on the Blue Nile, is set to power a landlocked country.
Welcome back, you're watching Addis News Hour. Ethiopia says it's committed to African solutions to African problems, respects AU's decision and efforts to give an African remedy to the situation in northern Ethiopia. The UN is a key partner for Ethiopia, but its members or mission in the country shall act according to international principles and law of the land. The remarks came from Bilene Suyum, Press Secretary of Office of the Prime Minister, in her interview with CGTN. Sintayo Tamrat tells us more.
The government of Ethiopia strongly believes that the African Union has a capability to find solutions for the continent's problems. This has been reflected in several global and regional arenas, including the AU's effort to handle the Grand Renaissance Dam dispute among Ethiopia, Sudan and Egypt, which the United Nations itself showed acclamation to Ethiopia's stance.
We appreciate the significant involvement of the African Union in resolving the dispute over the dam, including the work of its committee of technical and legal experts.
A solution is possible because the two countries are great countries, and the Nile River is important to both countries, and there must be a way in which their interests can be addressed, and there must be a way in which a solution can be found. As for ourselves, we are willing to play a role in facilitating whatever agreement that can be crafted.
In like manner, Ethiopia is all positive about the AU's designation of former Nigerian President Obasanjo as a special envoy to deal with the conflict in North Ethiopia, Bilene Suyum, Press Secretariat for the Prime Minister, said.
His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo is designated by the African Union as a special envoy for the Horn of Africa. We believe and we we are fully committed to African solutions to African problems. So we respect the decision of the African Union to make this a continental-wide effort. And by doing so, in their designation of His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, we respect him as an elder, as a statesman that has had quite a reputation throughout the continent for bringing various groups together and conferring around issues of peace and security. We do believe that he's also well positioned to do that.
As a founding member of the League of Nations, Ethiopia is committed to translate the laws of the United Nations. However, the country has been showing resilience to external powers, unlawful and hence unacceptable interference in Ethiopia's domestic affairs. Likewise, the country strongly demands all the UN staff in its borders to act in accord with the UN principles and laws, as well as the law of the land. And this is how the Press Secretariat reacted to the UN's recent complaints over the detention of its members in Ethiopia.
I would have to first share with you that the United Nations is a key partner for Ethiopia as well. The United Nations is also comprised or constituted based on Ethiopia's willingness to forge a strong foundation for multilateralism as well. Ethiopia was one of the founders of the League of Nations. So having set this context for the role that Ethiopia plays within the United Nations and understanding that the role the United Nations plays in Ethiopia, we have to be very careful in positioning or viewing individuals who work within this institution and putting them on a platform that is not considering that they're not above reproach. There are many actors.
Since the onset of the strife in North Ethiopia last year, Ethiopia, unlike any other time in history after World War II, has been receiving a wave of pressures from members of global community of the Western Bloc. Politicizing the human rights and internationalizing the completely domestic affairs of the country by these entities has been greatly criticized by many countries that are fighting for true multilateralism.
An Ethiopian diaspora lashed out at U.S. media for their complicity in peddling false narratives in Ethiopia. Naaman Zeleka emphasized that no country compromises when its sovereignty is endangered by insurrectionist groups. This remark came while Naaman talked to Russian Times on current affairs of Ethiopia. Gushmal Sozmo.
The United States administration and its allies opened coordinated warfare on Ethiopia by distorting the fact. Talking to Russian Times, global Ethiopian advocate Naaman Zeleka lashed out U.S. media complicit in peddling systematically false narratives in Ethiopia.
The media really does a very bad job. In fact, it is complicit in peddling false narratives. For example, the TPLF supporters in the diaspora have been peddling genocide, systematic famine, which the government, they accuse the government, systematic atrocities, even ethnic cleansing and genocide. These false narratives, which have been dispelled by the UN and Ethiopian Human Rights Commission, have been peddled by the mainstream media like CNN and Reuters. Now they have proven to have no ground, according to a UN report just released on November 3rd, last week.
He said no country compromised when its sovereignty endangered by insurrectionist group.
The world must understand, including the United States, no government, I repeat, would tolerate or just sit idle when its sovereignty and security are compromised by brutal attack which was then planned by a terrorist, an insurrectionist group which dominated Ethiopia for 27 years when it lost power, and the capture of state which it held for 27 years. It planned for 2 years, it prepared for 2 years, raised 200,000 special force and militia for a population of 6 million out of 110 million. It planned everything to destabilize and to derail the reform process, which started by the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Finally, it struck struck so brutally and committed heinous crimes. Now, the government had to act to protect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ethiopia, to defend it from this insurrectionist group.
Saying the Biden administration is the long-time ally of the TPLF, Naaman disclosed that US supports the TPLF in various ways.
The Biden administration, in particular, key leaders within the Biden administration were long-time allies of the TPLF. They propped, they helped, they supported politically, diplomatically, even provided military support for the TPLF when it ruled Ethiopia for 27 years.
Policymakers and lawmakers in the United States are using the pretext of impunity and twisted by TPLF lobbyists to put pressure on Ethiopia, Naaman unveiled.
Policymakers and lawmakers in the United States have been repeating and upping these forties. And the TPLF, during its 27 years tenure, impunity and state terror, it was very, very smart, and it placed its apparatchiks, its members within the UN system, within the media system. It has many long-time allies, even the Biden administration, like Stuzer Rice and Blinken, Gail Smith, who is now an advisor at State Department. All these people are colluding with mainstream media, heavily influenced by TPLF lobbyists, to put an undue pressure, a very much misguided policy that encourages insurrection and terror on a sovereign state.
The agenda of the TPLF is to return to power and destabilize Ethiopia, Naaman noted.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this is beautiful.
Welcome to the city of Bajaj, the double J city, Jiga.
State Minister of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Redwan Hussein, refuted reports of some media there is a systematic arrest in Addis Ababa and other parts of the country. In an exclusive interview with Al Jazeera, Redwan Hussein indicated police may arrest suspected individuals wherever they are.
There is no systematic arrest. Since the state of emergency is actually started by the government, then people are vigilant. So citizens are watching out their neighborhoods and each other for out of possible attacks. So people might inform the police if they see something unusual or something amiss. Yes, police might have arrested some individuals. I cannot rule out that, but it will not be systematic. It will not be from one ethnic group. It would be from all walks of life if there is any kind of information tip for the police. But if the police doesn't have adequate reason to suspect, then people would be released. So this is very much an interesting time. And
regarding the alleged detention of UN personnel and WFP drivers by the Ethiopian government, Redwan said suspects are not arrested just because they work for UN institutions.
There are two factors for that. One, these same entities are not complaining about 800 trucks, which are now blocked in Tigray and carrying combatants. They are not complaining about that. Again, those 300 trucks now are allowed to go to Tigray. I think today that is done. And also flights are allowed to Kombolcha and Lalibela. That's also done today. But the problem is the route which aid would be transported now is turned into conflict zone. And it's not the government which is now firing. Government's only defending itself. Now these actors should complain, the one which is turning the peaceful route into conflict zone, and the one which is blocking 800 trucks from transporting food. but transporting combatants. That is why we are complaining, that is why we are complaining some UN agencies are not doing their job, but they are simply covering up atrocities against our citizens.
Concerning reports of some international media about the insurgents putting the capital under siege, the State Minister said the conflict has never come to the capital, but there is a concerted effort to concoct stories and twist factories into great hysteria to force people to resign from the government and also to disorient the government from focusing on the problem. The Biden administration has waged a proxy war against the democratically elected government of Ethiopia in an apparent move to press American interest. This remark was made by the Ethiopian American Ali Kahem Ali, also a member of the Democratic Party and human rights activist. He has called on the Biden administration to refrain from meddling in the internal affairs of Ethiopia and also lift its sanctions. Goshmalso reports.
Since Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed took power, the United States and its allies have put undue pressure on Ethiopia. The country is therefore battling not only the terrorist TPLF group, but also diplomatically coordinated wars posed on it. The Ethiopian-American Ali Shem Ali, also member of the Democratic Party in the USA and human rights activist, has spent some time with ETV discussing current issues unfolding in Ethiopia. He says the Biden administration has waged proxy war against democratically elected government of Ethiopia.
United States in last years took a different approach. We are waging a war against democratically elected government by the people of Ethiopia, for the people of Ethiopia. Therefore, United States waging a war is a proxy war. But United States have a better tool, are better equipped than any country in the world to protect their interests anywhere.
Ali hammered that the TPLF has committed mass atrocities over the past 3 decades, with efforts by the US to back it to power, which is totally unacceptable.
If TPLF was so great, they had 27 years of leadership, of governance. What they have done, torture, mass killing, and so on. So we cannot sell to any Ethiopian or any African today. Bringing back the TPLF to power is a mistake. And I believe the Ethiopians decided to fight back, and we as well, a diaspora, to do our best to advocate our senator and our congressman.
He also calls upon the Biden administration to refrain from meddling in the internal affairs of Ethiopia.
And I'm calling on my administration, I'm my party, Democratic Party, and Mr. President, you have a chance, you have an opportunity to show the world that the United States is still and have a power and have a solution to lead the world and find a peaceful solution in Ethiopia and beyond, and to respect and open dialogue directly with Ethiopian elected government led by Abiy Ahmed. And we can show the world we can fix it. It's in your hands, and I know you can do it, and you can do much better. And I'm calling all diaspora to advocate and write to your senator, congressman, to intervene in the Congress, to lift all sanction put in Ethiopia.
He also urges all Ethiopian diasporas to be ambassadors of their home country to protect interests of their nation.
Before we go, a quick reminder of our top stories. Ethiopia commits itself for African solutions to African problems. And US media complicit in peddling false narratives about Tigray.